Today we're going to be going over the Red Heart yarn. This is a medium weight yarn and it's in the color Americana. This is a 5-ounce skein of 236 yards, and this yarn is going to be used for granny squares. Now this is 100% acrylic, which I don't usually use. So this is specifically for a granny square. And if you've never started a granny square before, we're going to start with a magic circle. Now the magic circle, it's just, we take it and we chain 3, and then we slip stitch those 3 together to crochet around that circle. So we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to find where we first did our first loop, and then we're going to slip stitch those together, and then we're going to chain 5 to start our granny square. Now granny squares usually have 4 corners. You can do more, but if you're just starting out, I recommend 4 corners. You'll chain 5 because that counts as a double crochet plus 2 for the corner, because we'll be chaining 2 in between each corner. And so that's the first double crochet plus the first corner, and then we're going to double crochet 3 into our magic circle. Make sure you use the same spot in the middle of those 3 crochets, those 3 chains that we did in the beginning. So then we will go through. One thing that I do really like about this yarn is that it is easy to work with. There's no risk of going through the yarn itself. Sometimes whenever you're working closely like this, it can become a problem where you stick your hook through the yarn. So it's pretty helpful whenever you don't have to worry about that. And then we're going to make our other corner, which is 2 chains and then another set of 3 double crochets, and then we follow it around to where we first started. Okay, so I said earlier that I didn't have a problem with the yarn pulling through itself, but unfortunately that has happened twice. So then whenever we get to the other corner, we're going to chain 2, and instead of doing 3 double crochets, we're going to do 2 and then connect it onto where the 3rd chain in our chain of 5 from the beginning is. So that way it will connect and make a square. Now this is the idea for the entire granny square, but we're going to increase because we cannot keep it at the same size. With your tail, I tuck mine so I can pull it, but with your tail it's really all preference. If you want to cut it, if you want to sew it in later, if you just want to leave it for some reason for an embellishment attachment point, then you can. It's totally up to you. So then we're going to slip stitch into the first corner, and then exactly how we were doing around our magic circle, we're going to do increments of 3 double crochets. So this will be our first chain 3, counting as a double crochet. and then we will double crochet 2 more, do a corner of 2 chains, and then continue around as we did before. This one we're going to just make sure that we also tuck our tail and then go around each corner, and whenever we get around to the last corner and we're about to connect, I'll come back. Now we're at our joining point, so we're just going to do the last set of 2, because between each increment of 3 we did a chain 2, so we need to do the chain 2. Then whenever we slip stitch into there, I do, some people just do single crochets or slip stitch or whatever to get to the corner, but I like to take mine and actually flip it around to where it can be slip stitched through the hole, and then you just chain 3 and go around like we did with row 2, which gives us the option of not having to either blend colors by slip stitching or actually trimming the yarn each time, because you can cut your yarn if you're switching colors, but with one steady color like this, you don't really want to do that. Whenever we're doing the 3rd row, something that you have to really pay attention to is keeping it flat. So laying it down every few turns would probably help with that. It helps me, but again, it really all depends on your yarn hook and what all you're doing with it at that time. Now, as we go around, I'm probably not gonna do a voiceover the whole time. I just wanted to say one more point of, whenever you get through this row, you'll want to check and see your design. Something that bothers me is where the striping happens. Now, this isn't a self-striping yarn. This isn't something that is meant to be transitional. It's meant to be bold. But for me, my personal preference and a difference from some of the other yarns that I use is that this switches at an unusual point, which I've mentioned in a previous video. It bothers me. So that's another reason why I don't usually use this type of yarn as far as the color changing yarn. But if we're going off of big and bold, this is a beautiful yarn. Now, at this point, we're going to go ahead and compare sizes with another granny square that we've made before. Now, usually you want your granny squares to all be the same size, and no, I'm not using this granny square with this one, but you can tell the difference in the thicknesses and the stitches. This is a smaller weight yarn. So sometimes it may not feel the same, so you've got to compare it to make sure that it kind of follows the same, and then you'll want to follow the rows, and then it will match up the more you compare it. So that way you can finish your row, turn your work, and then on top of the previously made granny square, you can kind of compare sizes and stitches and everything. Now the granny square that I have a reference to underneath is a different style. This is one where you don't chain 2 between the 3. You only chain 2 on the corners, which is a completely different style. It gives it a different flow, and this one also transforms from a circle to a square, so it's a little bit different, but they are all the same size. Whenever it switches to red, there is a long bit of red that goes in this patch. So you'll see it overlap, or it may not overlap at all. And for me, it's not desirable, but it does work very well together in a granny square. See how it folds together and it kind of just blends in. It's not self-striping yarn, again, like I said, but it does stripe in parts. So whenever you are crocheting, it gives it this extra quality. It's not like every square you make is not going to be exactly the same, which really adds to the joy of using this type of yarn. Now, whenever you get towards your 6 inches, which is what you're going to want is 6 by 6, whenever you get to that, you can really start to see the shape of the yarn. Now, if you need to stretch and shape it, you can with fabric softener and water, but this is soft enough to where it doesn't really need it, and it's pretty much exactly 6 inches on both sides. So we're done. We're just going to trim, and then we're going to sew the edge into there, and then maybe stretch it a little bit, which I don't think it needs that much stretching, but maybe stretch it just a little bit. And the colors are reversible, so you can use either side of this for your project. I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.